Welcome to today's podcast.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Today we'll explore these key vocabularies in depth. Grate, grater, herb, scales, ladle as a noun, ladle as a verb, with detailed definitions and rich examples to help you master their usage. Grate, verb, to grate, means to reduce a solid food, such as cheese or vegetables, into small shreds by rubbing it against a rough surface.
She chose to grate the aged Parmesan over the pasta, transforming solid chunks into delicate shreds that melted instantly into the warm sauce.
He needed to grate the fresh ginger root finely to release its full aromatic oils and spicy flavor evenly throughout the stir-fry.
They decided to grate raw carrots directly into the muffin batter, ensuring every bite combined sweet vegetable moisture with tender crumb texture.
She learned how to grate citrus zest by holding the fruit against the fine side of the grater to capture fragrant oils without pith.
He remembered to grate the nutmeg last, preventing it from clumping, and to dust his eggnog with freshly powdered spice for optimal aroma.
She always took care to grate cold butter into flour with a metal box grater when making pie crust, improving dough flakiness.
He practiced how to grate a block of cheddar quickly by applying even pressure and consistent strokes across the grater's surface.
She taught her son to grate chocolate bars into fine flecks for elegant dessert garnishes that melted on the tongue.
He demonstrated the technique to grate hard-boiled eggs over salad, turning firm whites and yolks into fluffy, cloud-like sprinkles.
She preferred to grate fresh horseradish root immediately before serving to preserve its potent, pungent bite in the roast beef sauce.
He tested how slowly to grate frozen coconut for coconut macaroons, ensuring tiny, even fragments that held together in the meringue.
She instructed him to grate wax crayons into the canvas to create a unique, melted texture for her art project.
He opted to grate dense polenta cakes rather than slice them, creating crunchy golden crumbs for creamier polenta cakes recipe.
She found that to grate dense sweet potatoes finally required a coarse grater, yielding small shreds that crisped quickly during roasting.
He decided to grate slivers of fresh turmeric root into his soup but wore gloves to avoid staining his hands bright orange.
She remembered to grate the frozen butter directly into the dry ingredients for biscuits, maintaining butter flakes that puffed neatly.
He learned that to grate semi-hard cheeses, chilling them first prevented the shreds from clumping and ensured consistent texture.
She discovered that using a fine blade to grate mozzarella resulted in airy, lace-like tendrils perfect for topping garlic bread.
He recommended to grate raw beets sparingly into slaws because the vivid red juices could easily stain light-colored utensils or countertops.
Grater, noun. A grater is a kitchen utensil with perforated metal surfaces, used to shred, slice, or zest foods by rubbing them across its edges.
She selected a four-sided grater, so she could switch among coarse, medium, fine, and zesting surfaces depending on the ingredient.
He stored his box-style grater alongside cutting boards, knowing that quick access improved efficiency during meal preparation.
They admired the ergonomic handle and sturdy stainless steel of the new grater, which felt comfortable and safe during repetitive use.
She kept a flat microplane grater in her drawer specifically for zesting lemons and grating hard cheeses into fine dust.
He taught his roommate to hold the grater at an angle, allowing shreds to fall freely instead of jamming between the blades.
She cleaned the grater by scrubbing gently with a nylon brush under warm water to dislodge trapped vegetable fibers.
He replaced his worn wooden handle grater with a sleek dishwasher-safe model to reduce hand fatigue and sanitation concerns.
She wrapped the grater in a protective sleeve before storing it to prevent the sharp edges from cutting through the drawer lining.
He used the side of the grater, labeled for fine shreds, to prepare delicate almond meal by gently rubbing toasted nuts.
She discovered that the grater, with larger holes, produced chunkier pieces ideally suited for rustic root vegetable hash recipes.
He cautioned against using the grater on hard frozen items, explaining that doing so could bend or damage the metal blades.
She valued the safety of a grater that included a protective finger guard to prevent accidental cuts during high-volume shredding.
He fashioned a makeshift grater by pressing a piece of clean sandpaper over a wooden block, mimicking fine zesting blades.
She dried her grater immediately after washing to prevent rust spots and maintain the sharpness of each perforation.
He experimented with the grater's slicing side to turn potatoes into thin, uniform chips ready for frying.
She kept a miniature handheld grater in her picnic basket for freshly grating Parmesan over salads and pasta outdoors.
He recommended occasionally sharpening a flat grater by running a metal file along the reverse side to restore crisp edges.
She admired the decorative embossing on her vintage copper grater, which doubled as a functional kitchen tool and countertop accent.
He replaced the scratched plastic handle on his grater with a sustainable bamboo alternative for improved grip and eco-friendly style.
Herb. Noun. A herb is any plant valued for its flavor, aroma, or therapeutic properties, often used fresh or dried in cooking, teas, and remedies.
She plucked fresh herb sprigs from her windowsill garden, including basil, thyme, and rosemary to flavor tonight's soup.
He learned to identify the herb oregano in the wild by its distinctive pungent scent and small, fuzzy gray-green leaves.
They dried the herb bunch of mint and lavender by hanging it upside down in a dark, airy cupboard to retain oils.
She mixed minced herb, parsley, and chives into her mashed potatoes to add freshness and a subtle onion-like bite.
He brewed a soothing herb tea by steeping chamomile and lemon balm to ease stress before bedtime.
She infused olive oil with a medley of herb sprigs, sage, rosemary, and thyme to drizzle over roasted meats for extra complexity.
He recommended rubbing a garlicky herb paste under the skin of the chicken before roasting to impart deep flavor.
She chopped the herb dill very finely for her tzatziki sauce to add bright, celery-like notes to Greek yogurt.
He created a soothing bath soak by blending herb lavender buds with Epsom salts for relaxation.
She described the delicate herb tarragon flavor as reminiscent of licorice and added it sparingly to fish dishes.
He garnished his soup with small sprigs of fresh herb cilantro just before serving to preserve its aroma.
She discovered that crushing a herb sprig between her fingers immediately released stronger essential oils for cooking.
He harvested the herb chervil bouquet garni for classic French stews and then removed the stems before serving.
She learned that freezing a herb puree in ice cube trays allowed year-round use of summer flavors.
He praised the herb mint's cooling sensation in his homemade gelato, balancing sweetness with botanical brightness.
She mixed dried herb marjoram into her tomato sauce, giving it floral, oregano-like undertones that lingered on the palate.
He stored the herb sage leaves between sheets of parchment in a Ziploc bag to flatten and preserve them.
She cultivated a herb garden in raised beds to supply her kitchen with constant access to fresh ingredients.
He described the difference between using fresh versus dried herb oregano, noting the latter's intensified concentration and potency.
Scales. Noun. Scales are devices used for measuring weight, ranging from small kitchen scales to large platform models for industrial use.
She placed her ingredients on the digital kitchen scales to measure exactly 200 grams of flour for her pastry dough.
He calibrated the analog scales before weighing the roast to ensure accurate cooking times based on precise weights.
They switched from mechanical to electronic scales for their bakery, accelerating orders with digital readouts within seconds.
She placed the fish on ice over a ventilated platform, remembering to zero the platform scales first to account for the ice weight.
He loaded heavy parcels onto the warehouse scales to calculate shipping costs accurately based on exact kilogram measurements.
She stepped onto the bathroom scales each morning to track her weight as part of her fitness routine.
He weighed precious metals on a jewelry jeweler's precision scales accurate to 1/100th of a gram.
She used vintage brass kitchen scales for decorative flair, whether weighing spices or simply adorning her countertop.
He compared different models of postal scales before choosing one with a built-in label printer to streamline his small business.
She moistened her hands slightly before handling the digital scales to prevent static interference with the sensor.
He stored extra batteries for the battery-powered kitchen scales to avoid unexpected downtime during meal prep.
She preferred a tare function on her platform scales to subtract container weight before adding bulk ingredients.
He cleaned the stainless steel platform of the scales after each use to maintain hygiene and calibration.
She arranged her spices in labeled jars on a decorative set of antique scales to add both function and charm.
He read the owner's manual thoroughly before installing the heavy industrial scales to ensure correct assembly.
She used precision analytical scales in her lab experiments to measure compounds down to micrograms.
He taught his children to read the non-digital scales by identifying the pointer's position between weight markers.
She appreciated the higher weight limit on her new commercial kitchen scales to accommodate large turkeys during Thanksgiving.
He replaced the worn platform mat on the digital scales to restore accurate pressure distribution for consistent readings.
Ladle, noun. A ladle is a long-handled, deep bowl utensil used for serving soups, stews, sauces, and other liquids.
She dipped the ladle into the simmering pot of chili, gathering a generous scoop of hearty beans and broth.
He held the ladle steady while transferring hot stock from the pot to the waiting bowls on the counter.
They placed the stainless steel ladle into a hanging rack above the stove for easy access while cooking.
She measured out portions precisely using a 3-ounce ladle, ensuring each bowl received equal servings.
He chose a silicone-tipped ladle to avoid scratching the nonstick surface of his soup pot.
She admired the ornate copper ladle inherited from her grandmother, passed down through generations as both heirloom and tool.
He rinsed the ladle in warm water immediately after serving to prevent food from drying in its deep bowl.
She let the ladle rest on the built-in hook at the pot's rim, keeping her countertop free of drips.
He replaced the wooden ladle with a heat-resistant plastic model to prevent burning the handle.
She filled the ladle halfway to avoid spills when pouring hot gumbo into deep bowls for her guests.
He bought a professional chef's ladle with a flat pouring lip for precise drip-free transfers.
She anchored the ladle in the broth, tilting the handle to fill her serving dish neatly without splashes.
He polished the brass ladle until it gleamed, restoring the antique utensil's bright surface for family gatherings.
She kept the ladle next to the soup station at the buffet line for smooth, continuous service.
He hung his extra-long ladle from a pot rack to accommodate deep stock pots in large kettles.
She noted that the ladle capacity determined whether 1 or 2 scoops would fill each bowl adequately.
He used a perforated ladle to lift meatballs from simmering tomato sauce, leaving excess liquid behind.
She appreciated the ergonomic grip on her new ladle, which reduced wrist strain during extended serving periods.
He recommended the rounded inside edges of the ladle bowl for easy cleaning and complete removal of residual liquids.
Ladle, verb, to ladle, means to serve or distribute liquid food by using a ladle, pouring bowls or containers in controlled portions.
She began to ladle the creamy tomato soup into bowls one by one, ensuring each guest received the perfect amount.
He learned how to ladle stew gently to avoid breaking apart tender meat and vegetable pieces while serving.
They practiced how to ladle vegetable broth into cups at the self-serve station for quick pedestrian pickup.
She demonstrated how to ladle batter into the muffin tin with consistent measurements for uniform rise.
He needed to ladle the hot oil from the deep fryer into a separate container for cooling and filtering.
She attempted to ladle the curd slowly over the tart base, creating an even, smooth layer of filling.
He suggested to ladle the pancake batter from the side of the bowl for precision on each griddle portion.
She taught new servers how to ladle bisque without spilling and how to tilt the bowl for cleaner presentation.
He would ladle the punch carefully into glasses to prevent ice from clogging the spout.
She instructed her assistant to ladle just enough gravy over each roast slice, keeping plates neat and appetizing.
He found it easier to ladle portion soup by angling the ladle against the bowl edge for smooth flow.
She demonstrated how to ladle the rhubarb compote into jars before sealing them for preservation.
He practiced how to ladle the batter with his offhand while holding the tin steady with the other.
She advised to ladle the sauce into the pan slowly to avoid splatter when deglazing.
He remarked that learning to ladle consistently improved both speed and presentation in busy service conditions.
She chose to ladle the spinach dip into a hollowed bread bowl, filling it without dripping onto the table.
He taught her to ladle hot cereal into deep bowls, then immediately top it with butter and cinnamon sugar.
She preferred to ladle extra stock over the roast turkey before carving to keep each slice moist.
He explained that to ladle correctly, one must pivot their wrist gently to control flow and avoid drips. We hope these vivid examples help you feel confident using grate, grater, herb, scales, ladle as a noun and ladle as a verb in your daily conversations and culinary adventures.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Join us next time for more vocabulary insights.
Goodbye and happy learning!